Good morning, Little Masters, and welcome back to today's Tolkien Times, a Prancing Pony podcast production. I'm the Man of the West, and I want to go ahead and keep week 87 going with another Word Nerd Wednesday. I am continuing with my new tradition of using these Word Nerd Wednesdays to look at some of the new names and words that we've encountered, or maybe we'll soon encounter, in our Túrin Turambar Tuesday readings. Now, my notes say that we've looked at some of Túrin's names before, but certainly nowhere near all, and I wanted to cover all of them here in one place as we prepare to wrap up Word Nerd Wednesdays for Series 11 next week. Listed in the order in which they appear, Túrin called himself, or was called by others, Woodwoes, or Wild Man of the Woods, Nathan, Gorthal, Aragorn, Adanavel, Túrin, Mormagil, Turambar, and next week, Dagnir Glaurunga. Finally, Tolkien also referred to him as Nyramarth in a genealogical tree. So, let's get started. First, Túrin. We've never actually talked about his name before. Túrin is a Sindarin name combining the element Túr for victory and Ind, meaning heart. Now that Túr element is also in the name of the High King Túragan, ruling lord, though it literally means master shout in his name. The Ind element for heart is also in Túrin's father's name, Húrin, meaning vigorous heart. And it's also in a nickname given to Andreth. She's called Silend, which means wise heart. Now we see the Quenya cognate of that in the name of Túragan's city, Gondolin, heart of hidden rock. Interestingly, even in the earliest lost tales, Túrin's name was, well, Túrin. Early on it was translated as Lord, but it has since been a combination of victory and heart since the etymologies of the 1930s. Now let's move on to Woodwoes. This name, given to Túrin as an insult by Cyros, the late Cyros, I might add, in case you too were thinking of insulting Túrin. Woodwoes is a Middle English term. It occurs as Wodwos in Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. In the chapter on the Druidine in Unfinished Tales, we learned that woes, remember they were called the Woses, is a modernization, in this case the form that the word would have had now if it still existed in the language, of an Anglo-Saxon word wasa, which is actually found only in the compound Woodawasa, wild man of the woods. The footnote there reminds us that the other time we see this is this moment, when Cyros calls Túrin a Woodwose. In modern English, it's been replaced by the term wild man, hence wild man of the woods, a name that Túrin gives himself when questioned about his identity later on. Now let's move on to Nathan. This is an interesting one. It's translated directly as the wronged for us in the text. It's a name that simply copies the noun Nathan, which we learn about in, say it with me, Parma El Delamberon number 17. There, it is a noun meaning one deprived, exile whose rights and goods have been confiscated. So it's not just a victim of injustice. It's a word specifically applied to people who have been exiled. A word that actually doesn't apply to Túrin unless self-exile counts. So his name means more than just the wronged. It means one who is deprived. Then we get to Gorthal. Now that's another Sindarin compound from two elements. The first is Gor, meaning horror, dread, fear, like in Gorgoroth, and one of Sauron's names, Gorthar. The second element, Thol, is helm, and we really only see it one other time in the story, Dor Quarthol, land of bow and helm. Now, the Thol ending has a bit of a personal meaning for me. I named my primary character in The Lord of the Rings online Durthol, Dark Helm, from Dur, meaning dark or gloomy, like Dolgul Dur, Barad-dur, and the Thol element for helm. So I knew what it meant. You might not have. Now let's go ahead and move on to Aragorn. I covered this back in Series 10, where we learned that not only is Aragorn translated for us directly in the text as bloodstained, we learned that we have to take that at face value because it's the only place where the word agar, meaning blood, is used. And same with the lenited form wine of gwyn for stained, not seen anywhere else. Adanavel. Now, we also talked about this in Series 10. It's a pretty easy word to think through if you've been paying attention to Sindarin elements. Adan is the Sindarin word for man as a species. It's singular because we see it in the plural Edain, as well as names like Dunadan, man of the west, and one of Elrond's sons, Eladan, elf man. In fact, Adanavel is essentially the mirror image of Eladan's name. Eladan is elf man, while Adanavel is man-elf. The second element, Evel for elf, is seen in other names like Aravel, where it means noble elf, or Evelond, elf haven, and others. Túrin is an interesting one. It's a name of his that I'd almost forgotten about. It doesn't appear in the account in the Silmarillion where I've been reading the story. But if I'd read the Children of Húrin version, we'd be doing Túrin Tuesdays for another year. Anyway, this name, Túrin, is given to Túrin by Finduilas in the full version because she doesn't buy that his real name is supposedly Aragorn, blood-stained. Smart girl, that Finduilas. So instead, she calls him Túrin, which is simply the adjective Túrin, which means secret or hidden, used as a name. And we see that same element in the name of the bat that Luthien disguises herself as, Thuringwethil, woman of secret shadow. Interestingly, we also see Túrin as an element in a name that Túrin gives himself in a draft found in the War of the Jewels, where he calls himself Thuringud, translated as hidden foe. And no, Thuringud is not an early form of George Thorogood, singer of Bad to the Bone. Okay, that's a deep 80s cut there, and sorry, not sorry. Let's move on to Mormegil. This is another one that I covered back in Series 10. It's a Sindarin combination of morn, meaning black, and megil, which is said to mean sword. Now, the morn element is one that we see in a lot of places, usually just as mor, without the final N, as in Mordor, black land, Moria, black pit, Morgul, black arts, necromancy, etc. Now, the megil element is less frequently seen. Turns out a couple of the kings of Arthedain had the lenited form, Vegil, with a V instead of an M, in their names. For more on those, go back to Week 81's Word Nerd Wednesday. Turambar. Now, just 3 weeks ago, we talked about this one. It has the same Tur element in his name, master, and the second element derived from a root that is the common ground with a lot of words related to fate. Quenya Umbar, fate, doom, curse, and Sindarin Amarth, fate or doom. So the phrase, Túrin Turambar Túrin Ambartanen, quite literally what it says on the tin right here in the chapter, Master of Doom by Doom Mastered. We've talked at length about the names, so let's move on to the second half of this statement, Túrin Ambartanen. Now, Turu is the passive participle form of the element Tur. Tur becomes Turu, so it means to be mastered or defeated. Ambartanen is what's known as an instrumental. It's formed with the Quenya suffix nen, and it roughly compares to English with or by means of. So it's instrumental because it indicates the instrument or the means by which an action occurred. And I want to point that out because it's a kind of a unique thing. We see the same idea of an instrumental in Galadriel's Namarie, in the line, Ai laurie lantar lassi surinen. Surinen. Ah, like gold fall the leaves in the wind. Here, the nen suffix in the last word, surinen, indicates that the leaves, the previous word right before that, lassi, have fallen by means of the wind. So in this saying, we take the same ambar element, meaning fate, but show that Túrin has been mastered, Turun, by means of fate, ambar tannen. Now, as for Dagnir Glarunga and Niedermarth, we're going to save those for next week. For now, though, folks, that is it for today's Word Nerd Wednesday. Come back next week as we wander the wide, wild, wonderful world of words weekly on Wednesdays. And if there's a word you want to know more about, just let me know. Email barliman@theprancingponypodcast.com. Please visit patreon.com/Tolkien Times to learn how you can support the show, get an ad-free feed, a monthly hangout with me, bonus weekly episode, and more. And then join me again tomorrow on today's Tolkien Times for Third Age Thursday. Podcast listeners, please be sure to subscribe to the show in your podcast apps. For those on YouTube, click the subscribe button to this channel to get all of the PPP productions. And everybody, please be sure to follow @PrancingPonyPod on social media. Finally, as Faramir says, go with the goodwill of all good men.